Okay, let's start just with a bit of turning, for want of anything better to do. So just hood the eyes so that everything's blurred as it passes you. So it starts off generally like a physical exercise. So you're moving, enjoying the movement, but quite quickly it becomes qigong. So it becomes an energy exercise. So for that, you just need to quieten down within it and just become aware of your breathing within it. You don't have to coordinate the breathing, but just be aware of it. And just slowly bring your mind to those energy points in the body. So the crown of the head, the tongue on the roof of the mouth, the dantian, and a little bit of tightness in the perineum. So then you can add to that also the heart and the throat, the soft bit just above the bone. So all of those points should feel like they're on a vertical line. And you're trying your best just to revolve around that line. So the skill in this game is really just the ability just to put the mind where it's meant to be and just keep it there. Okay, so as we turn, just bring your attention to the coccyx and just imagine that the coccyx is just very heavy and it's hanging down. So it's slightly different than having the mind in the perineum. So it's back from the perineum. So when you think the coccyx heavy, then the lower back straightens out a little bit. And the dantian feels like it's got a slight lift in it. Yeah, so when you put your mind somewhere, it doesn't do anything physically, not immediately. It is simply a change in concentration, but slowly, it will start adjusting the body. So if you think of your coccyx heavy, then the lower back will slowly stretch a little bit. If you make physical adjustments yourself, then it'll just be like a willful hardness. It'll do more harm than good. So we say just use mind, not force, or energy, not force. So just feel how the heavy coccyx sort of, it reins in the mind, the wandering mind. So when the mind wanders, goes off on journeys, then the bum tends to stick out a little bit. So the heavy coccyx will just pull your bum in and rein in the mind. And then just feel the centrifugal force. So it's gentle, but it's insistent. So it's not just your arms being thrown out, it's like the flesh on your face is loosening up and being thrown around a bit. Yeah, you can feel the flesh on your torso trying to fling out. All the time, the perineum a little bit tight and the sacrum heavy. Coccyx, sacrum. So the coccyx is just the bottom part of the sacrum. So the centrifugal force throws everything out. It sort of clears a space in the middle then. And then the mind can just settle there. Okay, and now let's just stand. So you can still feel the centrifugal force sort of pulling you apart. Yeah, so we just want to stop thinking of ourselves as a single thing, as like an ego that just happens to have these rather convenient instruments of perambulation beneath me called legs. So instead, just feel yourself as like two strands that come up from the ground and sort of twine around each other for a while and then branch out again. So you're very much a combination of two parts. So it's almost like that sense of identity, that sense of ego. It's really just an illusion. It's like a sort of interference pattern or a mirage. So just feel the left side, feel the right side, and they should feel quite different. It's like the two halves of the brain, you know? They just have very different functions. So that I am the marriage of these two parts, the left side and the right side. So that's the turning exercise is useful because it just separates those out. So they're easier to feel separate from each other. So again, heavy coccyx. So just try and get that as to be a really important part of your arsenal. So it's just as important as this. It's the mirror of this, if you like. So the light crown and the heavy coccyx. So the whole spine is being stretched and lengthened rather than compressed, which it normally is. Okay, and now let's just move slightly. So just shifting the weight into this leg. Feel it just sinking down. You can lean over, so don't worry about keeping the spine vertical. The spine is vertical at the top. So you just want to feel the two sides. Feel the left side becoming more dominant. And then feel the right side becoming more dominant. Yeah. And just relax down, so sink and relax. So when you sink and relax, you'll feel the shoulders wanting to drop. So there's a real sort of sense of heaviness that's being supported by this springy leg. So the leg has got a bounce in it, but it's just the leg, it's not your body. Okay, no. So let's try and separate out the leg from the body. So just feel yourself just settling onto this leg. Okay, now just let your mind just be really heavy and still in the middle, settling over this foot, yeah? So here in the dantian. So what you want to do now is just move your body using the leg without moving your mind first. So your mind is trying its best to stay in this position. And then I really have to push with that leg. So I really push with the leg. And the mind is a bit surprised. It's a bit surprised to find itself moving. It's trying to cling onto this position. Again, relax into this leg. Heavy coccyx, mind in dantian. Okay, now just keep the mind still and in this spot. And now just start using the leg to push yourself out. So you want to feel that feeling of yourself being torn out of a position. So if my mind is trying to stay here and my leg is pushing, then this almost like part of my mind is being torn out of itself. And then once you get to the middle, it sort of plops up and then you can sink into this leg. So just heavy, make yourself heavy and then just use the leg. So the mind is still and heavy in this spot, and then I tell the leg to push. And you can see if you got it really well, the leg just wouldn't have the strength to move yourself. You'd be so damn heavy. So we don't realize just how much everything that we do with the mind before the body actually kicks in. So it makes everything much easier. But it also means you have much less of a connection. The only thing you really have a connection with is your own willfulness that's actually made the actions happen. So what we're trying to do is get a connection with the ground. So just really make yourself heavy and then just force the leg to do the work. Yeah, so just feel your mind sinking through and just grabbing that ground beneath your foot. It's like it's really holding on for dear life. And then you start using the leg. Yeah, so we're using the body to try and look at the mind and just see how we don't really know what we're doing with it most of the time. So it's too busy most of the time. So here we're just trying to still it down a bit. My mind is holding onto that ground beneath that thought, doesn't want to give it up. And now I just squeeze with this leg. Okay. And now just settling back in the middle. Yeah, so just feel your two strands. So this leg, and it's like your two plants that have sort of twisted around each other. And just feel that sort of play between them. Yeah. So there's like a dance going on all the time. Okay. And now let's just try those Qigong. So now you can really feel like you've got, so this side is doing something, this side is doing something. It's never quite together. So you don't want that mind that locks things together rigidly, because that's completely artificial. You've got two sides doing the same thing, but they're always a little bit at odds. Yeah, so the waist is always twisting and turning. The hips are always turning. And the feet are just always sort of doing this, sort of pumping a little bit. So there's this constant play going on, especially in your lower body. Yeah, so it's like you're giving yourself a wash with chi. So you're scooping the chi out of the air and then just scattering it over yourself. And it just trickles down, washes down your body. Yeah, so your anchor is that sort of heavy coccyx just hanging down. Yeah, so heavy coccyx is just bum in. You just got to give it time. But when your bum is in, then it's very difficult to be heavy of heart. You'll just find there's a natural lift here all the time. Yeah, so when we do something, we tend to watch ourselves doing it, which will tend to stick the bum out a bit. And you'll be more like this. So having the bum in, having the coccyx heavy, it just means you can't stand back and watch yourself. You're just so much in it, in the thick of it. It no longer matters what it looks like, whether you're getting it right or not. But that's the main thing people get wrong, is that they're always tilted forwards a little bit to make themselves more sort of focused and studious and more careful, if you like. So we want this just hanging down so that this can blossom. Yeah, it's one of the reasons, the term internal. Yeah, so we're investigating the internal, but I mean, what's difficult, what's wrong with that word in a sense is that when you talk about the internal, you get a sense of there's something inside that we're trying to get to, but it's not. We are inside looking out. So in a sense, we are external, we're externalizing. So we're coming out of this centered place, this internal place. We're not outside trying our best to crowd in. Remember, John used to liken it to, he'd say in the class, he says, look, you're all dipping your toes in the river. What I want you to do is throw yourself in. Yeah, so it's the difference between just experiencing something, part-time, and actually just taking that plunge and just total immersion. So the feeling of these exercises is you just become so drenched with chi that you're just right in the middle. And then the work is just a journey into more and more immersion, more and more total immersion. Yeah, so when you see an enlightened master, they just can't pull themselves out of that anymore. They've just gone. Yeah, they've left this world. Okay, so now just back out to riding horse again. Okay, so when we come to us like a still place, just use it as a place you can renew your vows, if you like. So head suspended, tongue on the roof of the mouth. It's like the tongue is trying to sort of push up to this point. Not hard, but just gentle. So the perineum a little bit tight. That just keeps your holes closed, yeah? Stops you leaking. And then the sacrum just heavy. Yeah, and so it'll tend to drive you sort of down and forwards a little bit into it feels like the heels, but then you start slipping forwards a little bit into the front of the foot from the heel. Mind in the danchen, but of course this danchen now feels like it's just lifting a bit because my coccyx is just edging forwards as I work. And then this just feels very sort of open, but in a hollow way. It's not open like this, it's open like this. It's hollowed out and it's now receptive. Okay, and now let's try the next one. So the next one's where we just dip down. Yeah, so just imagine your fingers are just dipping down into the ground. And then you're just pulling out a clod of chi. And just bringing it into the danchen. So it tends to come up through the body and then settle back down into the danchen. Yeah, so that tends to be how it wants to happen. And gradually it goes up higher and higher, but it still always just comes down and settles in the danchen. And then just dipping down. Yeah, so just keep relaxed across the hips. Again, always feeling the two sides of the body. Yeah? So you should have a definite wobble. Yeah, it should feel a little bit unstable. That's a good sign. So you don't want your stability to be a consequence of you locking the two sides of your body together. Your stability just comes from your quiet mind. But the body will always wobble, often precariously so, especially when you're, when you're trembling with the pain and the exertion. Yeah, so this is where heavy sacrum, heavy coccyx needs to be quite important, because there's a tendency to sort of dip forwards like this to get more of a down. You want it to be your heavy coccyx that takes you down. And then, so you just feel how the legs are working. So the legs are squeezing, the legs are pushing you up, but without breaking that connection with the ground. It's like they're stretching something up. And then again, it just plops into the dantian. And then again. And just feel the perineum, the anus, the urethral sphincter, they're all tightening to pull up the energy from the ground. So remember, if you're working softly, there's always an element of your mind that's curious. It's investigative. It's the part that gets bored. So just allow that. Yeah, so you can be shifting from leg to leg. You can be turning a little. So if you allow it, your mind will always find new ways of doing things. It's like new solutions to old problems. And you just really want to encourage that. Because that's how, that's how you get new material. Yeah, so as long as you keep the thread going, you can do all sorts of variations within it. So we're just trying to keep like a thread of unbroken time for the duration. And it's just a very gentle mind. Okay, now let's just try bringing it a bit higher. Yeah, so just work it up sort of to the heart. And then just gradually all the way to the top of the head. Yeah, so throat. Wow. Always feeling the two legs working separately but together. So they're independent of each other, but they're just trying to cooperate with each other. Yeah, and then let's just bring it up and out of the top of the head. So we end up just doing the opposite of the first one. So it's like a fountain coming out the top of your head, and then it just scatters all around you. So this is like rain. So that you're generating this chi that's coming up through you from the ground, and then it just rains all around you. Soaks into the ground, and then you just recycle it. All the time, coccyx heavy. And then one more. Whoa. Okay. And then just back into sort of riding horse. Yeah, if the legs get sore, you can just bring them up. You could even have the feet completely together, as long as the legs are bent a little bit. There's an interesting exercise if if you're with a person, then they're standing and you just put your hands on them, and then you tell them just bend your legs just a fraction. As soon as they do, you just feel yourself falling through their body, because as soon as the legs bend, they're sinking. So without that bend in the knees, the energy can't flow down through you. And it's weird because people don't feel it. They don't feel it within themselves. They just feel their legs being a little bit painful. There's a heavy shoulders, remember? But you want the golden apples under the arms. So you don't want this to happen, yeah? So there's this sense that your arms have come over something in order to get into the position. Okay, now let's try the next one, which is just in and out, open, closed. So here going right in, and then here out, in, out. Yeah, so your gaze is inside, your gaze is outside, but you're actually in all the time. It's like you just become dead to the world here. You shroud yourself, you pull your cloak around yourself, and then here you expose yourself. You're like a flasher. So here, in, out. So heavy coccyx in the midst of it. Wow. Yeah, so this is the one that tends to get a bit stiff because both sides, it's so easy to get both sides doing the same thing. So just make sure you've got a bit of twisting, a bit of movement from leg to leg as you do it, so it doesn't solidify. Yeah, so we just want it to change through time. It doesn't stay the same. And the change is not because we have a busy mind that's trying to find new ways of doing it, but because we have this still mind that forces these new ways to pop out. Yeah, so we're just putting the system under pressure, like we're adding more weight with the heaviness of our own mind, so that that lightness of spirit can actually dance around. Wow. Yeah, and then when you feel it getting active, just come back to the coccyx. Yeah. So when it's threatening to run away with itself, just come back to the anchor, which is your heavy coccyx, hanging down. So spine plumb erect. Yeah, so it's actually, so it's very different. You know, if you were leaning back on a wall, then your back would be flat, but it wouldn't be Tai Chi vertical spine, because your coccyx wouldn't be hanging between your legs. It would be back here somewhere. So when you get the coccyx right, the belly feels like it's lifting. And the John used to say there was this energy just streaming out of the dantian and into the face, smarting the eyes like a smoke. So the Buddhists say, quieten the mind, but don't sink into a stupor. Yeah, so you don't want to become stupid. Well, no more stupid anyway. Yeah, so the mind becomes quiet and heavy so that the spirit can become light. So that's the important ingredient, really, that lightness of spirit that rises up against the heavy mind. Yeah, so it's like a tree. Just to feel the roots sort of coming out of your feet, threading through the ground. And then feel all this sort of activity up here. And then something really has to happen in the torso to wriggle it all up and down. That's the waist, yeah. So the waist is really like the muscles that turn against the skeleton. So these sort of twisty, sort of grindy muscles. So slowly they slowly be, the longer you stand in position and do these exercises, the more you'll become aware of the waist. But it does take time. If so someone was like, had you in a bear hug and they were really crushing you, then it's your waist you'd use to wriggle out. It's a bit like that here. It's like that, the time we've been in doing this, gravity, it's all getting us into a tighter and tighter bear hug. So something here starts to become active, just to struggle against that. So we want to activate the waist in the right way. We want it to come into play out of necessity rather than because we've decided we want to use the waist. It's the problem with all of these things. It's very easy to make them happen, but then they're not right. So it's not what you do, it's how you do it. Okay, so now let's just go into riding horse again. So feel gravity pulling you down. Yeah, so it's like slowly, as we stand, it just feels more and more like your skin is just being pulled off you. And you're sort of emerging out of that, like the snake. Heavy coccyx, belly lifting, crown going up, tongue on the roof of the mouth. Slight depression here, not so much that it makes the spine collapse, but softness in the chest. And this is the center of it all. Okay, now let's try the last one. So remember, this is the one where we reach out to the other person. Yeah, so you just want to feel that slight adjustment in your posture as you bring the arms up. So as you bring the arms up and your attention goes out, just feel how your upper back leans back up very, very slightly. So the coccyx actually swings forwards a little bit. So this is when you have that heavy coccyx really well. It's when you're actually reaching out of yourself to actually connect with someone else. This is the wonderful thing for me about Tai Chi. You only really get it right when you're working with another person. Okay, now just instead of just dropping them down, which is a bit sort of gloomy, just bring the hands in. Yeah, so it's very similar to the first one we do. It's just reaching forwards, but really using the mind to extend this warm welcome into an embrace. So really feel this hollow. you're creating a lovely space here for the other person to come into. And then it just brings your own hands in. So your own hands just flow into that space. Yeah. So it's like you're creating like a vacuum between your arms, which you're trying to use to suck the other person in, but it ends up just drawing your own hands in. And what would you do with your eyes? You know, if you wanted someone to come for a hug, you know, your eyes would just implore, wouldn't they? That you just look at them and just accept them, invite them with your eyes. Yeah. So it's everything. Yeah, but heavy coccyx. So normally when people give hugs, you know, they put their arms around, they pull their groin back because it's not polite to sort of rub yourself again. Yeah, so they miss out on the best bit. Yeah. So just let this swing forwards. And it's nice. It's nice practicing this with someone else. You just have them in front of you, and you're both doing the same thing. Yeah. So it doesn't require any energy. Yeah. Imagine you're lying on your deathbed. It won't be long. Yeah, you just got no energy. You don't have a drop of energy left. You're about to croak. Someone comes in who you love. Yeah. The way you just looked at them would just invite them in. Yeah, so it's exactly the same here. So just a real sincerity would come out. And that would be really strong. It would sort of move the other person to tears. You know, it'd have that sort of power. You know, apparently cats, if a cat gets run over by a car and it's sort of dying, apparently if you pick them up or start stroking them or just sit with them, they just start purring. Yeah, so despite all that pain, it's just the only thing that's important is that connection. Yeah. Okay, one more. Okay. Okay, now let's just try one other one. Yes, in a sense, it's the most important, but it's the one you sort of come to last in a way. Yeah, so it's like that goblet of fire exercise I used to do. So just lifting the arms up so that your arms are like a mirror of your legs, but gazing upwards. Yeah. So we have a relationship with the ground through our heaviness, through gravity. But we have a relationship with the heavens through our lightness, through our levity. And so in the same way that gravity is pulling me down, and if I just allow that to happen, then energy will come up from the ground. So in exactly the symmetrical way, yeah. If I can feel the heavens pulling me up, and I can just go with that, then the energy from the heavens will just come down into me like a grace, yeah. So you just basically just stand as long as you can. So again, heavy coccyx, that's important because when we bring the arms above the head, the bum tends to stick out a bit, so the lower back gets a bit sway. So you're just trying your best to have heavy sacrum, heavy coccyx, yeah. And again, just crown of the head. There's a tendency to look up, but you don't need to, and it probably is best not to. So, so when you're quiet inside, you become aware of this anti-gravity force from above. It's like the vacuum of the heavens are trying to suck you up and out. And it's that like gives the heart wanderlust. Yeah. So this desire for the beyond, for the unknown. It's that call from the heavens. Yeah, so two very different realities. You've got the reality of the body and like the heavy mind, yeah, so which is down. And you got the reality of your energy and spirit, which is up, trying to lift. And they're trying to sort of leave each other behind, really. So your body is a site of this tearing between these two components, which is, it feels like tearing too. It's quite tricky to deal with. It's quite emotional. So you're just trying your best just to really relax everything down. You're relaxing the body so it can be pulled down. So the shoulders are relaxed. And yet something is coming through the fingers and lifting them up. It's like a miracle. Yeah, so it's wonderful to do this amongst trees because this is exactly what a tree is doing all the time. The tree is just praying to God all the time. It doesn't do anything else. We're part-timers. And just, so the journey is just a journey into full-time. Yeah. We only really get that when you get old, yeah. When there's no distractions anymore. the age of distraction. That's what I saw contemporaneously described as recently. Okay. And now just reach up a little. Imagine there's like a balloon hanging down from the ceiling, you know, like a kid's balloon with the helium in, with the thread hanging off it where they hold onto it. So what you do, you just reach up and you just grab the thread and then slowly just pull that balloon down until your hand, and now the balloon is right in front of your head. So your head is the balloon that's wanting to escape up to the heavens all the time. So when the head is free of thoughts, of heaviness, of self-generated heaviness, then it just wants to float upwards. And then just bring the hands down to the dantian and put the hands on the dantian and just feel it just becoming really, you know, you can't help but have your mind here when the hands are here. So it's like you earth yourself by putting your hands on your dantian. You bring yourself back to a really warm physical reality. Then you just say a prayer. As John would say, just dedicate it how you will. Dedicate the energy of the session. Okay, great.